Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to the Thursday, April 20th, 2023 Public Works Committee meeting. It's a very chilly morning today. With roll call, we've got Councilmember Althasser, Councilmember Schneider, and myself, Councilmember Swarthout, in attendance. First order of business is to approve the minutes from the February 23rd, 2023 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, so we've got our motion approved. And next up, our first item of business is the briefing of service provider agreement with TCF Architecture for the city operations and maintenance facility design. And we have Don Carney up. Take it away, Don.
Good morning.
You're very tiny, Don.
Hi.
What happened to you?
What happened? It was working.
Now you're gone.
Am I gone?
Yeah, now you're gone. You're big, you're fuzzy and you're gone.
It's not working. What's going on?
I don't know. You're just teeny and very far away and blurry,
Okay.
but we can hear
Wait.
you.
You can hear me fine. Okay. And of course I have a presentation, so perhaps that'll come across just fine. So let me start that. If it's okay, I'll share screen.
Oh, you got big again.
There we go. That looks good. Better. All right. So long-awaited city operations and maintenance facility. This is a service provider agreement briefing. We want to talk about the entering into an agreement with the architect for the design of the operations and maintenance facility. As you're aware, we've been working on this for a while, and we've been wanting to move many of the facilities, the public works and parks facilities, over to the new site. Time's passed, and we have downsized a bit, and we're looking to move public works services over to the new site. The new location is current location is in the center of the map, and the newer location is over in the lower right-hand corner. You can see where the proposed maintenance operation facility will be, and the next to the proposed park at Trails End Drive and the future Highway 99 79th roundabout. It's all, in the general same vicinity. So the history of getting this thing, where we're at today is back in 2011, we began looking for a new site for parks and facilities and the public works building. In 2014, we purchased Trails End Arena. The property became available shortly after the economy downturn in 2008. In 2016, we hired TCF Architecture to do the master planning, which included a final site location where we're at. It was either going to be the west side or the east side of Trails End Drive. Through public meetings and discussions, we decided on the east side. Oh, I'm sorry, the west side. So the public works is the only operation that's moving to this new location. We needed to downsize due to the cost of the initial facility. Outlay was just too much for the budget, so we've reduced it to just public works. TCF provided us with a building layout, building sizing, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And we were also able to show that we were going to be able to put the park on the east side of Trails End Drive. Facility program that TCF did for us back then was showing us about what, the lobbies, meeting rooms, staff offices, generally showing the site layout, new buildings, where they're going to go, where's everybody going to fit, how's everything going to be situated on that west parcel. So the next slide, this is generally what it looks like today. The two parcels are split by Trails End Drive. Again, the east side is going to be where the new park is being proposed, and on the west side is where we'll put our new facility. This is again the general layout. This is what the architect put together for us. City operations and all on the west side, the layout, access points, one off of 79th, and we've got two off of Trails End Drive, and all the buildings are being located generally here. The layout was, tried to minimize the amount of backing and maneuvering that needed to happen so we could keep our on-site noise limited, and also to maximize drive aisles and building locations. These are the different buildings that are proposed, and there are different square footages and of course the total square footage at the very bottom. So you can see just buildings alone were a little bit over an acre, about an acre and a half total for the structures. And then if you take in the drive aisles and outside storage, the 6 acre site quickly gets previous slide, showing generally that there is in the center lower area is a rain garden, and then we have a buffer to the north and a buffer to the west with additional storm abilities, and parking. You got staff parking in front of the building, and there's going to be, of course, all maintenance vehicles and facility vehicles inside the lot itself. The consultant contract. So we here at Public Works in Transportation Engineering decided that the Office of Financial Management guidelines for A&E contracts was the preferred method of contracting with this consultant. The OFM guidelines is really basically set up for facilities and constructing buildings. Department of Enterprise Services utilizes the OFM guidelines exclusively for all of their construction projects. The basic design fee, and there's two different, in the OFM guidelines, there's two different types of fees that consultants, architects, engineers utilize, and they're basic or additional design fees. So the basic design fee is based on the maximum allowable construction cost. So that's the cost that it would take for that you would give to a contractor to construct the facility. So in this instance, we looked at a cost estimate of the whole project. And what we do is we base the fees on that. So it's a percentage of the MAC is what we inform the consultant that this is his basic fee charge. The fee is structured on the complexity of the building or the site. So OFM has broken it down into 3 different categories. You've got A and B and C, and the complexity gets, A is the more complicated and C being the simpler structures. And we've determined here that the maintenance facility is a combination, is slightly somewhere above a C in complexity on some of the buildings, but below a B. And OFM has broken those all up and given you kind of some guidelines as to what buildings are what. Additional fees are fees that are not considered basic fees. And that's some specialty consultants that might want to come in, that need to come in, like your acoustics, like some of your HVAC balancing is actually an additional design fee. So you take the basic and then add on additional design fees, and that's where you come up with the total consultant fees. The contract deliverable structures, I think a lot of us are familiar more with a 30, 60, 90, 100% submittal. The way OFM has provided it's more of a schematic design. Then you do a design development, construction documents, and bid. So those are all different stages, similar again to a 30, 60, 90 construction documents. Scope of work, like most of our consultants, we like to get them to 100% plan, spec, and estimate. General components for this project, of course, similar to most projects, is you get your geotech work, permitting, site civil, structural, They are including everything on site is what this consultant is preparing for us. Offsite is by another consultant, and a lot of the utilities being brought in is again a different consultant. Fiscal notes, the consultant fee total is $2,450,000. Again, broke up into our basic services of $1,622,000. Additional services $827,000, and we have a management reserve of $202,000 for the total $2,450,000. So basic services in this one was estimated 6.07% of the total, and then additional services are negotiated. So the consultant provides us with, okay, so these are the additional services that you're going to need for the project, and this is what I propose to set as a cost for those additional services. So those are negotiated. It's not based on percentage. Unlike basic services, it's strictly a percentage. That percentage has been established by OFM in their guidelines, and it's picked, again, the complexity of the building, and we've kind of selected like a 6.07% and informed the consultant that's the number we will be using. Source funding on the project, generally we got 33% is general governmental CFP, 33% on water, 17% on storm and sanitary sewer. Are there any questions?
Okay. Councilmember Althauser.
Thanks. So essentially, this is a briefing on kind of the status of this contract to continue to do planning work. Is that sort of accurate? Like we don't have an actual action item today. This is an update on where the planning is in terms of our work with the service provider that we're contracting with for the master plan. Is that right?
That is correct. It is a briefing to discuss where we're at. We do have a desire to enter into a service provider agreement with this consultant, but it was more for the discussion of the facility itself and where we're at, and that we're ready to move forward. We have everything worked out. We've got a contract and fees and a scope of services all figured out. So we're ready to move after discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Schneider.
Thank you. So my question, Don, is on this consultant fee, do we already have that money set aside, or we still have to accumulate that?
So I was going to try to step in, and I apologize. I'm having computer issues, so I had to download Zoom on my personal computer, and things are going wonky. So I was that reverb just a minute ago. So for the money, we do have the funds set aside for the consultant work. What we don't have is for utilities. We don't actually have a pot of money sitting there, but we have revenue dedicated. So it'll be a debt-funded project with a dedicated revenue source to pay the debt. As far as the question that was asked before to Dawn about whether or not there's an action item tonight or today, there is no action. We originally intended on coming with a request for committee to recommend to council that we enter into the service provider agreement. There were some last minute changes to the agreement, and we were not going to be able to get it reviewed and approved prior to this committee. So we did change it to just a briefing. We will be asking if you all are okay with us going direct to council for the action next. It would not be consent, so it would be a presentation and full action. But typically we do try to get the action from committee first.
Do we have a timeline on this then, as far as deadlines that we need to meet, or what is your anticipated timeline on this?
I don't hear Don, so I'll jump in again real quick. So There is no, we have to meet this date deadline. Really the push would be that we've sort of been holding off on this agreement for a couple of years now, trying to iron through additional communication and engagement with the public and going through some of the contracting details because it's a big project. And every day that passes, the project costs go up. We've been kind of fighting this $40 million mark for construction, and you know, a long time ago we were going to get a lot more facilities for that money, and as we've come through with further discussions, the project keeps getting smaller, but the budget's staying the same, it seems like. So really timing, the issue with timing, honestly, is just costs. Costs are not going down. For schedule, we would anticipate that this design work is going to take probably about a year and a half. So right now, you know, we hope to start construction in 2024, but realistically, that's not going to happen. So we're really aiming for 25 right now for start of construction.
That's about right as far as starting construction. I mean, the consultant is looking, he's ready to move and he would like to get started as soon as we approve this. He's thinking like maybe in the summer of 2024, he should be able to present to us like 100% plan. So by the time you go out to advertisement and maybe consider whether it is looking like potentially an early 2025 start of construction and everything goes well and the consultant put things together as smoothly as he feels it would go.
Okay. All right. I was just looking at future agendas and wondering when we were going to anticipate putting this on the agenda for consideration for the council to take action on. Probably not until what, May 16th? It doesn't look like we have very much on that one.
I don't have it in front of me, the agenda, again, because my work computer's not functioning at the moment, but
Okay.
we were trying to go to the very next council meeting.
Okay. 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 Yeah, there's only one consideration item. The rest are all consents already on the one for the second. Okay. All right. All right. So do we have any other questions for Brandon or Don? So, okay. We're good. All right. So is it okay? We'll move on to the next item, Don?
Yeah,
Okay.
asking me.
All right.
Thank you.
Super. All right. Now, let's see. Our next item up is that we have an offsite office lease with South Puget Sound Community College discussion, and we're bringing up Dan.
Good morning, council. I'm going to share a screen. I got a presentation for you as well. And forgive me, my allergies have kicked into high gear this morning, so I might sound a little nasally for you, but do the best I can on this one. And all right, you should be seeing my screen now with a presentation. Yep, let's get to the beginning of it. Yep. And we're going to talk about a offsite office relocation for the Water Resources administrative team that sits in City Hall. Kind of good timing with the relocation of the Water Resources and Transportation Engineering Operations Division and the work that Don and Brandon have been working on for that. So this would be a little bit different. And what looking forward to talking with you today about is, you know, why are we looking at a move? I think, you know, if you've been in City Hall the last anytime in the last year or so, especially the last few months, more and more staff returning to in-office work. You know, City Hall is really reaching its capacity. It's near its limits. As you know, parking is really at capacity as well. So some real struggles at City Hall for us. In addition, Water Resources is looking at bringing on a new program manager sometime here in the next month or so. Transportation Engineering is bringing on 2 to 3 new staff members in the next couple of months, and we really don't have locations for them. We have been, you know, moving desks around. We've been using telework to help facilitate some capacity issues. And, you know, it's helping us gain a little bit of capacity, but not the kind of capacity as we're looking at, we're anticipated growing into over the next, 6 months to, a couple of years down the road. So really looking like we need to make some adjustments. As you might recall, during the last budget cycle, some funds were some allocated for a limited staff move. And following some conversations with Brandon, transportation engineering folks, we really kind of came to a determination that the water resources team, was the most flexible to be able to move as a work unit. The water resources team has limited interaction with the public on a counter basis, where there's a lot of folks that come in talking to the engineers for development needs, that's come in and talk about regular project needs, transportation issues. The water resources side, our customer connection is mostly out in the field, whether it's through workshops or events that our team might be holding, or we do bring people to City Hall for our water conservation incentives. That process wouldn't change. We would just develop additional support with the transportation engineering admin folks that be able to hand those out. Or another option we are looking at is actually being able to deliver a lot of these through online ordering. So using technology to help facilitate and streamline how the customers come in for water resources. Everything else that the water resources staff does is really either virtual with agency connections for our meetings, or dealing with folks in the field where we meet them on site for either site inspections or things like that. So our customer contact at City Hall is fairly limited. And we have a very unified team. We have a flexible team. We do a lot of collaborative work. We can do both, as we've demonstrated successfully through the pandemic. We can do a lot of hybrid work. But it doesn't take, it still requires an on-site space for us to be able to meet. And so after, Brandon and I and John talked about, what that might look like, we started looking around town for potential office spaces. And ironically, despite the fact that we have a ton of state office buildings and a lot of office spaces in town, there really wasn't a lot of options for a smaller work unit. We don't need an entire floor of some of these buildings, which is kind of the availability that is there. That said, we were able to sort out one option at Town Center East. It was about 2,800 square feet, a little bit bigger than we needed. Our target was around 2,000 to 2,200 square feet. Town Center East, presented an option. It's fairly close to City Hall. There was a secure building, and it was a traditional office environment that could be fairly easily equipped for a team of 8 as we would be moving. We were kind of discussing with Town Center East for a little bit, and as we were kind of nearing close to a decision, that might be the working option for us, and it was literally the only option for us in town. City Administrator Doan met with Timothy Stokes from SPSEC, and they were discussing building options there. And it turns out that there is some availability at the SPSEC and some of the former education buildings where students aren't necessarily returning to in classroom. There's a lot of hybrid options for students today. So there's some availability in those buildings. And we took a really closer look at a few options at SPSC, but the primary one that we had settled on is building number 32, kind of on the south west side of the campus, on the backside there, kind of bordering Tumwater over here, for the neighborhoods over there in R.W. Johnson neighborhood. So a little bit into the kind of the pros and cons of looking at the office spaces. In general, we'd be looking at increasing office space at City Hall for transportation engineering and potentially other departments. The move would immediately move 7 staff members, including myself, and the 8th staff member moving forward would be the new program manager. So we immediately be moving 8 staff over. We're increasing that parking capacity from 8 and looking over the horizon of a 10-year lease, potentially up to 12 vehicles being freed up at City Hall. It gives, a move like this gives the Water Resources Division some room to grow as well. We anticipate in the coming years looking at potential increases around urban sustainability or urban forestry and our sustainability program. In addition to potential, additional water resources staff for projects and things like that as we continue to grow. Also freeing up fleet space. We have 3 vehicles right now for the Water Resources Division that would be able to move with us, potentially up to 6 over the 10-year horizon, maybe a couple of more, but right now that's what we're looking at. And transportation engineering would gain some staff ready spaces. I know, like I said, that they have some applications out, some candidates that they're considering right now. They would get some staff ready spaces as that furniture that currently serves Water Resources would stay as part of the modular furniture we have down in the basement there. That would be immediately available to some new staff for them. So we would have the four workstations plus a kind of a half workstation plus an additional office for the managers. For SPSC, what's some of the benefits there looking at there versus Town Center East? Town Center East, it's closer to City Hall. It's a less than a 5-minute walk. That's nice for staff. It has part-time security, and the tenant improvements that we would need to consider. Part of the tenant improvements we would need to consider, such as paint and carpeting, those would be included within the lease with that office space. With SPSCC, we wouldn't necessarily they wouldn't include tenant improvements such as that. That would be the city's responsibility. However, the city has full autonomy to basically design and maintain the facilities that we would need to serve our team in there, which is a bonus for us because we would have a lot more flexibility with how we design things and how we can set things up and with the selections that get made for that. One of the biggest benefits to an SPSCC lease is public career promotion. To be able to sit and site an office space on SPSCC properties, there needs to be kind of that connection to mission for the school, which would allow us to formally build an internship program or a mentorship program. And in our vision, we're looking at that as promoting public work opportunities, developing the next generation of water resource scientists and professionals through our schools, whether it's SPSC, SPSCC, whether it's Evergreen, whether it's the Tumwater School District. There are a number of opportunities for us to develop this program, and so there's some excitement there. With the development of a new program, it can challenge our capacity issues a little bit, but we are already on the path. We do have one intern now. We were just looking to be expanding that to kind of serve all sectors of the water resources. In addition to the connection to mission for SPSCC, there's also a really good connection to mission for our water resources. Percival Creek runs through the middle of campus. It is a growing focus for us on salmon recovery, on habitat restoration, on water quality, and also understanding surface flows and things along those lines. And so it gives us a really good opportunity in connection with the internship program, the mentorship program, to be able to put together and work with students to help us acquire the data that we could use to help, assess, what our water resources are looking like, not only on Percival Creek, but we could expand that. But Percival Creek gives us kind of that on-site kind of laboratory to begin to work with. In addition, SPSCC also has kind of on the office side, we have full-time security. There, they would provide us dedicated fleet parking. We would not be able to get that at Town Center East, but for our fleet vehicles, we would be able to dedicate some spaces for that. So, from a security perspective, all our vehicles would be in the same space and be clearly marked as City of Tumwater. Looking at an EV charging partnership, SPSCC I think has 1 or 2 EV chargers for electric vehicles on site currently. We would be looking to help them expand that, one to serve our own needs as we build our electric vehicle fleet for water resources, and as that becomes more commonplace in the community, so students and other faculty and other folks in our community have another location for electric vehicle charging. And, last but definitely not least is, the partnership that we have with public agencies. I know SPSEC has been a fantastic partner to the city on a number of various projects, past, current, and looking into the future. This would continue that partnership and provide us potentially with some additional opportunities as we grow that relationship a little bit more and in a different way. And then last thing on the kind of the pros and cons with SPACC, it's an all-inclusive lease rate structure. With Town Center East, there are, the city is responsible for additional utilities, internet costs, janitorial costs, things like that. That would be all inclusive with the rate structure for SPSCC. One of the cons, and it's really just kind of the one-time things that we're just recognizing, is that moving is expensive in general. So there are some one-time costs associated with moving and furniture. Furniture is not inexpensive, and we're not, because of the modular nature of the furniture, as I said, so while transportation engineering would gain some staff-ready sites, we would need to acquire some new furniture to support the water resources team. So going back to building 32, the natural sciences building, this is kind of, we would have rooms 107, 108, 109, and two very small spaces for kind of Zoom and private meeting kind of setups in there. And so we kind of mocked up, well, what does that look like from a staff perspective? And you can see we would have, like a little small coffee table in each one of these rooms for Zoom meetings and for other conversations with, potentially public members of the public. We would have a meeting room set up on one side. What you don't see here, we would have some sort of divider on this room, and on the back side, we would have more storage, places for our equipment and things along those lines. This middle area here, we anticipate would be kind of additional storage, but also kind of a break room of sorts, maybe almost kind of like a bar setup, like a snack bar kind of setup, with some stools. So it's not a very large space in there, but it would be a space that we would be able to provide some amenities for staff along those lines. And then the workspaces would be over here. We would look at creating two offices for for myself and the other manager, and an open work floor plan for the remainder of staff with some hotel spaces. Right now we have, I said, 8 individuals. So we would also be creating additional capacity for, whether it's somebody from an operations team coming over, might be working, on site. There might be other needs within City Hall for somebody to have a temporary location. We also have right now, like as Meredith, who's working with us as kind of a consultant, but working with us on projects. She comes to City Hall, a few times a month. She needs a workspace to be able to kind of settle and work and collaborate with our teams. This would provide us those kinds of opportunities as well. So we're looking for additional space than just what we need today, building those workstations so we can support other programs, as well as additional needs that we have in water resources. On the cost side, as I mentioned, none of this is inexpensive. And the 2-year budget that was approved last year, I think we have about $65,000 for the 2-year biennium. As you can see here, the lease just for 1 year alone is about that at any place at either of the locations that we looked at. With SPSCC, the lease is about $61,300. At Town Center East is about $2,000 more on an average basis for just the lease costs. As I mentioned, everything is in the rate is included on the SPSCC side, whereas there are some additional utilities. There is some on-site janitorial and internet costs that the city would also be responsible for that would be included within the SPSCC budget. These costs you see here are the one-time costs that we anticipate. On the side with Town Center East, we included the carpet and the paint would be in the tenant improvement, would be included in the lease. What's not included as SPSCC. So there's just one of the variations of the cost. Furniture we're anticipating on the high side. However, probably not unrealistic for the amount of furniture that would be needed for new in there, and the services to kind of design the layouts and work with the service provider for those things. And then of course, we would have leases for printers and copiers and some potential phone costs, so we can stay in contact with the teams and our consultants and all of our customers. Overall, we're looking at a 10-year cost, and the lease rates do on both sides include some escalators. We anticipate that we know that the SPACC would be capped at about 3% in increase. Even if the market rates would increase beyond that, we would build into the lease that there would be a cap for about 3%. We haven't obviously had the depth of discussion with Town Center East over that. But I did build some escalators in there, and I think I capped it at 3% just for comparable reasons. So you see from a lease perspective, it works out to be about the same, $745 SPSCC to $738 Town Center East. Overall, though, with the additional costs and the other pieces of that financial puzzle, we anticipate a 10-year forecast being at $935,000 for SPSCC and $1.3 million for Town Center East on those budget comparisons. So not only do we have a lot of opportunities there from a partnership with SPSCC, but we also see that it makes more fiscal sense as well to move in that direction. So challenges, there are certainly some challenges, and they can be opportunities as well. One of the challenges we recognize is that team connectivity. Are we out of sight and out of mind because we're no longer at City Hall? How do we stay in touch with the other departments? How do we stay in touch with the other work units? That either rely on us or we rely on them for success. And so, one of the things we'll be talking about is how do we maintain that connectivity? We currently host meetings with other staff units, whether it's for training at the fire department or, for spill cleanups. And we do have staff that coordinate with or that attend other departmental meetings like code enforcement, things like that. So we would have a little bit more travel probably in our day to get from the office space over to a City Hall meeting. However, that's critical to us, and it gives us also opportunities to meet up with other staff as needed, while we're on site. As I mentioned before, the program maintenance or development and maintenance for like an internship mentorship program, that's an exciting opportunity, but it does take staff capacity and some resources to make sure that we can operate that in a good way. The school has indicated that they would help support that program for us or with us, and so we anticipate that those partnership details would be worked out, but again would still take some staff capacity to do. But does fit within our mission of education and on both the water and the stormwater side. Growth. So this is, growth is always a challenge, planning for growth, looking forward. How do we make sure that we have the resources that we need to implement, city council goals, whether it's around sustainability or urban forestry, managing those programs. This gives us some opportunity to develop at least the space that we can over time develop those resources and integrate those resources into the team and, give them a place to work from. And potentially, as I mentioned, other departments as well. We would be looking to have some flexible workspace that if somebody needed a desk, temporarily or potentially even longer, there might be some space and opportunities there for that. And as I mentioned earlier, the partnerships that we have with SPSCC are fantastic. As we continue to develop those relationships, there may be other opportunities. We certainly have opportunities with Evergreen State College, Tumwater School District on internships and developing some educational partnerships in those senses as well. And so, that's really, kind of the overview for you today. Our hope is really to kind of get any feedback. If there's any questions, is there something we've overlooked? Is there additional thoughts we need to kind of consider as we move forward with the lease? If all is looking okay, my intention would be to bring back the lease for your consideration, not at the next meeting, but at I think the May 16th meeting. Bring that back, and then once we have that accepted by council, we would move forward on an office remodel. We would acquire the furniture and eventually move in. And I'm pretty ambitious because I just know of the things that are in front of us in terms of hiring both transportation engineering and water resources and sustainability side. That I would love a July 1 move in. I know that's probably really ambitious, considering time it's going to take to get a contractor and hire and acquire all the furniture, but that would be my goal if we could get there. And then over the course of the remainder of this year, working with SPSEC to develop the EV chargers and start working on internship mentorship program is kind of what the remainder of 2023 and early 2024 would look like for us on this transition. So that's what I got. I stand for questions. I see Administrator Doan has got his hand up and ready to go.
If I could just add a great presentation, Dan, thank you for doing that. And just add a couple more things that I think are important. One is there's a council goal around workforce development and working with LOT and SPSCC and other partners around doing workforce development. And this sort of glides us right into that goal, where I think there'd be sort of an awkwardness as to how we figured that out. This actually gets us into that space. The other one is it actually sort of corrects a financial structure problem we've had for a long time, and that is that the utilities, City Hall was built and is on land owned by the general fund. The utilities don't pay rent to be in that building. And so this actually corrects that situation and takes the utilities out. For the most part, about 90% of Dan's department is funded through utilities. So it sort of corrects that issue. And then, as he said, turns that space over to transportation and engineering, who are hiring people who, when they come on board at the moment, don't have spaces, don't have desks. There's nowhere for them to work. So we've simply run out of space. And I think he did a good job of explaining why. We went through a lot of analysis to look at different options for which department could, leave the City Hall campus and be located offsite. And there were a lot of reasons why it made sense for it to be water resources and some really great benefits and opportunities that come from the SPSCC location. So that's all I wanted to add.
Okay, Councilmember Schneider.
Thank you. So Dan, great presentation. So I'd like to go back where the budget comparison chart was. I don't know if you can do that real quickly.
Okay. Let's see if we get there. Okay, there you go.
Okay, so it's just a small thing, but I'm looking at this and we have the 10-year budget, and the lease for the one is $61,299. And of course, the other one is higher at $63,300. But when you total it up, the one on the right, the town center one, the cost appears lower, but monthly fee is higher. So the numbers doesn't seem really to jive with one with the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's really kind of due to the escalators that I plugged in there. I don't know the escalation rates really for the town center lease, so I was a little bit more conservative with what those would look like. When we had the discussions with them, as we were kind of moving towards, more of a formal lease discussion, they were indicating that there would be a 10-year lease and that wouldn't necessarily include a lot of escalators. However, we know that there would be some escalation in there at some point, but I kept that, somewhat conservative compared to what I have more faith in or more confidence from the conversations with SPSCC, what their escalators would look like capped at. So I think I might have done a 2% escalation for the town center east versus I maxed out the 3% for SPSCC. So it grew higher over time compared to the town center lease.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for great presentations. It's almost like comparing apples and oranges on those two different charts. So thank you so much for that.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Althauser.
Yeah, so on that, you don't need to pull it back up, but on the chart for Town Center East, one of those things said kitchenette and sink. Does the SPS one not have, like you mentioned, the snack bar that could be developed or put in there, but is there no running water or sink in that office suite?
In the town center east, there isn't. And so everything would be outside of the room there. And so just for, staff needs, things like that, washing their hands when they came back in from the field, so to speak, we wanted to make sure that there was something installed there, and that would have been outside of the tenant improvement that would have been included. So we made sure that there was some funding for that. I also kept 15,000 on the other side for SPCAC, just for some minor improvements like that as well. But that room is actually a converted classroom. And so there was 2 classrooms that those would be converted, and they were science classrooms. So there was plumbing, there was sinks, things like that in there. So it'd be a lot easier of a conversion as
So
compared
there's
to
sinks, you could put a fridge in.
Yes.
Like,
Right.
yeah, okay. I just want to make sure people have places to keep food if you don't want to eat at the dining hall or,
Yep, definitely keeping that in mind.
well, as an SPSCC alum, I can certainly attest to the beauty of the campus as well. Like if you want to take a 15-minute break, want to go for a quick walk, like where else can you get into the middle of nature and kind of walk over that bridge, over the creek, and just kind of recharge the batteries with some of the scenic beauty that they have on campus there. It's a pretty unique space.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that really stood out to me first when Administrator Doan brought that up, was just having Percival Creek there and that connection to what we do. I mean, it really brings front and center, when we're looking at public and environmental health, as you all know, we've had some challenges sometimes with some sewer overflows, that have discharged to Percival Creek. We have, we do a lot of programs at the Sap Road Park for habitat restoration. We're doing salmon eDNA testing to determine which species are actually in the river. One of those tests that we had done, historically has always been at SPSCC. So, it gives us that, kind of that strong connection. And so yeah, when you take that 15-minute walk for a break, you can walk right over the creek, and you're reliving why you're doing your job. And I think that having that connection, to what we do is important for our folks to always just have kind of right there for them.
Thank you. I have to echo how beautiful it is. That's one of our daily walks, is to go through do the college loop, as we call it. So, and I don't know if that other little bridge that used to have the opening in it is still open, the old wood bridge. There's another one that's down from there that we used to, as kids, we used to walk across with the kiddos. So yeah. Anyway,
I think
it's
that was
beautiful.
currently closed.
So
though.
thank you.
Mhm.
So you hit all my questions. We had cost, timeline, and how long you're going to be there. So thank you for covering all that. So it sounds like we'll be bringing this back for council consideration then as well. Then
We'll bring the lease back to you first.
Okay.
See if there's any questions, and then we would bring that lease as to a consent calendar item, or if you would suggest a consideration item, for that work.
Okay.
So we'll bring that back to you first.
I think I would probably say it might be a candidate for consideration, just because it is, it's a big deal for staff to be offsite. It makes a lot of sense to me. I support it, but I think that, we haven't really done that in that large of a fashion before. So it would make sense to me to do it for full consideration, I think.
I would just
Everybody else up to speak.
so just real quick that we have probably a third. I mean, there's obviously the relocation costs that are a one-time cost. We didn't really budget those in the biennial budget, and the amount of money for the lease, we budgeted probably a third. We took sort of a shot in the dark as to how much it would cost. So we probably budgeted about a third. Is that what it is, Dan? Of what
It's $60,000 for the biennium that we have right now. And so that would be covered just by the lease cost alone for the 1 year.
Yeah.
And of course, it would be June, July. So we're, 1.5, type costs, but versus full 3.
Right. So I just want to be upfront that this is more expensive than what we guessed at in the budget. I think to some extent we were looking at, pre-pandemic lease rates that were a little bit lower. So I appreciate that Dan's, dove into this in much more detail. And, again, the utilities are in pretty good shape and can absorb this. And we don't have a lot of other options. The other options are still involving leasing space, but then it involves leasing it through the general fund.
And so we would just
Thank you
true
for
that
that.
up in our budget amendments in the fall or in the winter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. Do we have any
Great.
other questions for Dan then? Thank you for that presentation. Oh,
Well, thank you.
let's see. All right, let's see. Do we have any other items that we need to discuss? Anyone? Are we all good? All right. Well, with that, I will call the Thursday, April 20th, 2023 Public Works Committee adjourned. Thanks, everyone, and have a good day. Stay warm.